Hello, Broncos fans. It is the orange and blue view coming at you with myself, Thomas Hall, and Ron White. And we are here to talk about current events in the Denver Broncos world. And we have some good stuff coming at you today. Definitely got some coaching, assistant coaching information to talk about for sure. And one of the big ones is Evero is no longer going to be with the Broncos, Ron. So what do you think about that? Those goings on before we jump into a few other things.
It's unfortunate to see. Evero was a great defensive coordinator for Denver, but I understand that other opportunities arose and he had to move on. So it'll be interesting to see the moves that Denver has moving forward with Sean Payton on the staff. But I wish him well. He did great for this defense, and hopefully better opportunities arise from in the future. So.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. I mean, we got the news today. Evero's is being released from his contract. It's a real bummer in my mind, really, because he's a great defensive coordinator, young up and coming head coach. Plus, if he'd have stuck around, I mean, the benefit the Broncos if he left next year is to become a head coach. They're going to get compensatory picks. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why it's a bummer that he left. The players loved him. They really played hard for him all year. It really is a bummer. He's gonna probably be a defensive coordinator somewhere else. He still might get a head coaching job, so it might be a moot point anyway that he's being let go. But it's a bummer. So now we're gonna have to talk about not only defensive coordinators, so we're gonna have to talk about offensive coordinators and how Sean Payton is gonna build out his staff. So everybody that's joining in, we're sorry we got a little late start, technical difficulties, but we are live now. We are ready to roll. And don't forget to like the show and subscribe and follow us on Twitter if you want to talk a little bit more in depth. So, Ron, what do you want to talk about first? You want to talk about defensive coordinators or offensive coordinators? Because we don't have many rumors going around about who Sean Payton is going to want for his offensive coordinator. We have a couple defensive coordinators, and we can hit those first and then dive into offensive coordinators if you want. It's up to you.
Yeah, we can start off with on the defensive side. I know there's been a few names out there that have been rumored for. They did some interviews and such, or did request for some interviews. So we can start with the defensive coordinator first to see how that goes. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's two names that are already out there. I mean, they've already asked permission to interview to Brian Flores, obviously, which poses some problems since,
Yes.
He does have a lawsuit against the NFL, and Denver Broncos are named in that lawsuit. So that does pose a few issues. And then we have Sean Desai from the Seahawks that are going to be interviewed or have been interviewed already. I don't know if those have taken place yet, but those are two names. And Evero was the one that I was hoping for. But out of those two, Ron, what do you like?
I guess Basai would be good. He comes from the Vangio side, Vangio tree, if you will. So Brian Flores is an intriguing name. What he was able to do with the Steelers defense was great as well. I think for the Brian Flores hire, if he were to come in, I believe they'd have to shift their defensive scheme a bit. But it wouldn't. I wouldn't mind that one as much. But I would say maybe Pasai. I know there's other names floated around like Chris Richard. That may be a possibility. But I think Pasai, just because of the Vangio ties, would probably be high on my list.
It seems like a good fit. I mean, going from Evero's defense to Desai's defense, whatever it's going to be, under that Fangio influence, it seems like a pretty seamless transition. I mean, and Desai's, he's learned under some really good defensive-minded head coaches or defensive coordinators. So he was there with John Fox, Fangio you mentioned, also Pagano. Those are good defensive minds that he learned from, and he's been doing it for a while. Then he went to Seattle, learned under Pete Carroll for a season. So he's a seasoned defensive up and coming defensive coach for sure. I like him because he also has other intangibles, right? He's a very smart guy. He's learned several degrees. He's taught as an adjunct professor. I mean, those are some other skills that you bring as a teacher. Hopefully that translates onto the football field, which seems like it has. I mean, because he has definitely progressed. Yeah. So I really like him as an option for sure. I think it's going to be a seamless transition. Flores is a little bit different story for me. He's a good coach. He's had head coaching opportunity. I mean, he's already been head coach and did a pretty solid job. He's never really been a defensive coordinator, right? He was linebackers coach, then went into head coaching, and then he's, not a defensive coordinator really full-time there with the Steelers this last season. I think he was linebackers coach there too, if I remember correctly. So there's a little bit of, what is his story as a defensive coordinator, right? What would he bring? It's a little bit more of a question mark for me. So that I agree with you. I mean, I think Desai is probably their first choice and Flores may be their second. But what do you think with the lawsuit over their Flores, the heads of everything, the Broncos with Flores? Do you think that's a hurdle they have to clear?
I still think that's a hurdle. That's why I was so surprised that Flores was an option. I know that was more along the lines of when Ellis and Elway were kind of in the building. I think Flores took out that lawsuit really because of them. Now that they're out of the way, it still may not be that big of a hurdle, but I still think that because that lawsuit still looms large and it kind of gave us a really bad reputation, that's something that they would have to clear before he comes in. So I think that probably will be, Thomas, brought up in the interview, right? Once that's conducted, absolutely, right? How do you see this moving forward? What was the reasoning for doing this? Things like that. So I definitely think that's a question that has to get answered before that consideration even happens more. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's going to have to be taken care of before any hiring has to be made. So just want to give a shout out to Bridge the Gap. Thank you for the super chat. Bridge the Gap's coming in with Tom and Ron, big ballers, shot callers. Your thoughts on Broncos parting ways with Lauren Landau. Thank you for the support. Appreciate that. Go check out Bridge the Gap's new song and album that's going to be coming out pretty soon. So appreciate the support. And yeah, Lauren Landau. Well respected, obviously, throughout the NFL, but I mean, you can't overlook the troubles that the Broncos have had with the injuries. You just can't overlook it. I don't know what it is. In my mind, a change just has to be made, only for good luck at the very least, right? I mean, I don't want to knock Landau and what he did because, like I said, he's a well respected coach, strength and conditioning coach. But something was going on. Maybe it was bad luck, but a change was needed, Ron. How do you feel about that? I mean, that looked like it was writing on the wall.
I agree. A change is needed. I mean, this has been the past several years, Thomas, that Broncos injuries are at an all-time high. It's been constant soft tissue, lower injuries, and I think this year takes the cake. Right, of so many players on injured reserve. And I think that change is definitely needed. Now, it's going to be curious. I haven't heard anything as far as, how I know George Payton mentioned that they're going to take a look at the program, but I haven't heard anything recently of what's going to happen on that strength and conditioning program. But definitely we need a change because this has gotten ridiculous over these past few years. And hopefully with this new strength and conditioning person, we can stay injury free for the most part. I know it's a part of the game, but I definitely think that we can definitely use a shift there as well. So
absolutely. And we got Jasmine coming in. She says, "Hey guys, first time catching you guys live. Well, thank you for joining the show. We really appreciate it. We appreciate you stopping by. We do this every Saturday night, so this has been fun. We're just getting started. Really, this is our 5th show, and we are enjoying ourselves. So I'm glad that you caught us, and definitely stick around. Subscribe to the channel so you get these alerts, so you know when we come on. Appreciate you joining. So thank you very much. We had a quick question. I don't know who it was in the chat, but asking about where Sean Desai comes from. Now he's spent considerable time around different organizations. So he was at Temple, at Miami in college. Went to Boston College for a little while as a coach as well. Then he spent some time with the Chicago Bears. So Chicago Bears, he learned under John Fox for a little while, learned under Vic Fangio, and then finally Chuck Pagano. And he left because Nagy, that coaching staff, was let go, and he caught on with the Seattle Seahawks. So that's where he's kind of been. That's his career. Some time in college, and he's learned under some great coaches. So that Mike, thanks for that comment. Appreciate it. And that's where Desai comes from. And man, I mean, you can't ask for a much better resume. No matter how I feel about Pete Carroll, he's a good coach. He's a good defensive coach as well. So yeah, I mean, that's some pretty good teachers to learn from. So, and on top of his already honed skills just from being a teacher himself. So we'll see how it goes. But I'm kind of excited about that since Evero's not going to be here.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, let's. I really want to shift. I mean, we kind of have a already a feel for who they want to kind of bring in for defensive coordinators, but there hasn't been very little thought about offensive coordinators, and I think we need to spend some time on that, Ron. So, I'd like to hear who you think is somebody that Sean Payton might bring in and why. Like, I mean, because nobody's really there's some things, obvious choices out there, like Lombardi that that are thrown around, but like really, like where are you coming from this offensive coordinator position? Who would you like, and who do you think it's going to be?
You took the name out of my mouth there, Thomas. Joe Lombardi is my guy. Now, of course, we know Sean Payton's going to call the plays, so it's only going to be by the title that this person comes in, right? OC by title, but Sean Payton's going to call the plays. But if I had to guess, given the familiarity, given the fact that they've crossed paths, Joe Lombardi makes sense. Now, I know I think Brian Schottenheimer was just hired by the Cowboys, I believe, earlier today. So I know that's out of the question. But yeah, definitely Joe Lombardi would be the only name, at least, that comes to my mind that would make sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's getting thrown around. They have a some familiarity with each other for sure. But my thing is with him is he had it's a hit or miss with him as an offensive coordinator. One good season with the Lions, one bad season, kind of one pretty good season with the Chargers, not so good another season. So that's kind of where I'm at. But before I go on to who I really think is going to come in here, I'm going to get Rock Chalk Broncos with the coming with a super chat. Man, I appreciate it. I appreciate talking to you on Twitter. I appreciate when you're on the other shows when I see you on here. And Rock Chalk Broncos says, hey, Tom, Ron and Tom, first time being able to join your new show live. Great having you on Saturdays now. What potential free agent offensive lineman would you like the Broncos to target? Now, that's a good question. We'll probably hit that if we get a chance. There's some good ones out there. I actually I'm doing some analysis right now based on careers over the last 20 years, who they should actually target. So look for that, but we'll hit that in just a minute. We really want to jump into the offensive coordinators, but definitely going to get that in a little bit. What I would like to say though, about the familiarity with the Broncos or with Sean Payton is going to be a pretty driving force. I think he's not going to mess around. He wants somebody he knows. He's going to bring him in as offensive coordinator. But I do think there's one dark horse candidate that people aren't really talking about anymore because Harbaugh's out of the picture, and that's David Shaw. Why I think he's a dark horse candidate to come in as offensive coordinator is, number one, he got an interview for head coach because the relationship. So the ownership could pressure Sean Payton to, hey, throw him a bone here. He's our friend. Bring him in, offensive coordinator. Plus, they also worked together in 1997 with the Philadelphia Eagles. When Payton was the quarterback's coach and he was offensive assistant. So they have some familiarity already back in the olden days. Really, 97 seems like forever ago, especially for the NFL. So David Shaw might be someone that comes in only for that reason. I don't know. It's kind of a dark horse, like I said, but with the relationships with ownership, they might give them a little nudge to go that route. But I mean, the one that's obvious to me, I think, is Doug Marrone. Doug Marrone is an obvious choice. He was with the Saints for a few years with Sean Payton. He's been an offensive coordinator. He's been a head coach, and he's actually done an okay job at times as the offensive coordinator for the teams that he has been. I mean, he's not doesn't seem like a sexy hire, so to speak, right? He doesn't, like, oh, Doug Marrone, really? Going to bring that guy in? But, it would be a promotion for him. He's right now, he's the offensive line coach for the Saints. So, I mean, it makes sense for me, Doug Marrone being the offensive coordinator. There's familiarity, and he's good. He's a good offensive coordinator. How do you feel about Doug Marrone, Ron?
That name doesn't really move the needle for me. But it'll be interesting to see exactly if he is pulled in for an interview and if he does end up becoming the OC, how he and Sean Payton work together. I know you mentioned, right, there's some familiarity there, but let's see what happens there. But again, the name for me, Joe Lombardi, and I'm glad you mentioned David Shaw, because that is interesting. That definitely with, the Stanford connection, with the ownership group, that could definitely be a name that comes to the forefront. And then, if Sean Payton and him hit it off, that can definitely be a name to watch out for. So I know I was mostly thinking of David Shaw when Jim Harbaugh was the forefront candidate, but it makes sense, and it could definitely happen as well. So,
yeah, it does. I mean, you never know. You never know what's going to happen. I'm going to grab Jasmine here, coming in hot with the super chat. Thank you so much. We appreciate that support. It's wonderful to keep everything running here at Mile High Huddle. So thank you very much. And Jasmine says, I wanted Evero to stay, but I think the Broncos left a bad taste in his mouth, and I'm hoping ownership lets Payton take control of hiring the new staff. They need his expertise. And I agree with that for sure. I mean, both of them. Evero, I really appreciate the super chat so much, but Evero, he just, they let Hackett go. It's his first time as a defensive coordinator. I don't know how bad that rubbed him the wrong way. Obviously, it seemed like quite a bit, but this is a business in the NFL, and the business is winning. If you're not winning, you're not entertaining the fans, and that's the name of the game. And so everyone is going to have to learn that. He's going to be in situations where his buddies leave. He's going to be in a situation as a head coach where he has to fire his buddy, if they want to win. And that's happened. People have refused to fire their buddies, and they get let go. So Evero's going to have to learn that. And it's a bummer, man. I was hoping Evero stuck around, not only because he's a good coach, but he's going to be a head coach. And when he leaves, the Broncos were going to reap benefits, and draft choices for that. So, man, that definitely. But you're right. You're definitely right, Jasmine, when it comes to letting Sean Payton pick his staff. I hope that they don't. They don't meddle too much. Ron, do you think that the ownership is going to meddle in that choice? I mean, I mentioned David Shaw, that could be a meddle, but I mean, he's definitely got the requirements for being an offensive coordinator.
Thank you, Jasmine, again, for your generosity. That's much appreciated. Yeah, so I think that's part of the condition that Sean Payton came on, right, is for him to choose his own staff. And I don't think ownership will meddle. I highly doubt that they will. Sean Payton's already, after the signing of the contract, Sean Payton's already meeting with folks, seeing who would be the best coordinators on his staff, seeing who can do the good job on OCDC and things like that. So I think that's part of the condition that he came on, is that he would be able to choose his own staff. And knowing Sean Payton, knowing his experience, knowing his expertise, it's going to be a good, experienced veteran staff that can come in and change the culture of this team. And of course, that's what Broncos fans have been looking for over the past several seasons. So that will definitely happen, Jasmine. I have no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, don't meddle. Let him bring in who he wants. I mean, there's going to be. We'll probably jump into some other names, but we're gonna actually grab Rock Chalk Broncos comment here when it comes to offensive linemen. The Broncos have to fix their offensive line. It struggled. There was a lot of injuries, but even without the injuries, there was some struggle. It seemed like Reisner was definitely faltering, not as good as he was before. You got injuries, you've got Bowles coming back from injuries. So the only offensive lineman in my mind that's going to be solidly safe is Miners, but the rest could come or go. Who knows? They're going to need to get another guard. They've got to find a right tackle that can stay healthy and stick around. And, they're probably need to look at center as well. So if Bowles is fully healed, so that's a big deal. But right tackle, there's a few of them out there, and they're if you want to go with a young, up and comer, you got I don't know if Mike McGlinchey is really considered too young. He's going to be probably 29 during the season, but that name's been kicked around. I think there's a few other options, but one that is probably going to surprise everybody, and the reason you'll see when I finish this article about it, the older offensive linemen who have been pretty good throughout their career sometimes have a pretty solid peak, in their 34-year-old range. So that to me is Riley Reef. He could come in and on a 1-year contract and actually kind of solidify that line while they're waiting for someone to come in as a right tackle, waiting for someone to come in as a draft pick to replace him. If you could get him on a good, easy deal, 1-year deal, I'd take that. So what are your thoughts, Ron? Am I crazy to throw out Reef's name there?
No, Reef isn't bad, and I had Reef as a target for the Broncos. I think it was last year and the year before. So I'm all for that. Maybe coming in 1-year proof of deal, see what happens. I know a few other names out there. I know you mentioned Mike McGlinchey. Orlando Brown is one for the tackle position. Ben Powers, Kayla McGarry, Juwan Taylor. That name is intriguing there. Second year, helping protect Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. That might be a name to consider. So there are about like 3 or 4 names that come to mind that the Broncos could possibly look at to shore up this line. And I know there was it Ryan Ramczyk from the Saints that was.
No, I don't think he's coming up. He might be restricted at this point, but I think he's okay. I don't think he's unrestricted free agent. And okay. Sometimes it's good to try and go after a restricted free agent if they're a young up and comer. But he's really not. I'm with you on Juwan Taylor. If you're going to throw some cash out there for a young player who's just about ready to hit his prime, yes. That's someone you can spend some money on. Really, I'm down with that name, even though. He may not be, all pro yet or anything like that, but it's definitely worth looking at. There's another name that I find to be intriguing. Now, you may not agree with me, but it's Yosh Nijman, another young up and comer. Was at Green Bay. He's still fairly young, just really kind of getting his feet under him and starting to come into his prime. He could be someone that surprises people if you get him for a decent price, steal him out from under the Packers. So I don't know. Those are the names for tackles for me. And then we got to look at the offensive linemen, right? The interior offensive linemen. There's a few that I have on my name, but what do you think? Center guard options in the interior line, Ron?
Yeah, so center guard, I think Isaac Sumalo. I think that's his name. Though I think he's the guard from the Eagles. Is an intriguing name. And then center, I believe there's Ethan Pokic from the Cleveland Browns. Those names they're free agents, and they can definitely be in consideration in free agency. And then, of course, I think I mentioned Ben Powers as well, pass protecting for the Baltimore Ravens. So those are 3 names that come to mind to fix that interior. And you're definitely right, Thomas. I think the interior has struggled, and we definitely need change on the interior. Dalton Risner just has not been cutting the mustard.
Absolutely.
So coming in to help shore that up. And, of course, it's going to depend on what, the scheme, if these guys fit Sean Payton and the offensive line coach's scheme. So there are different factors here, right, when bringing them in. But those 3 come to mind that are some options for the Broncos to consider once free agency starts.
Absolutely. I'm with you on Ben Powers. I think he's a good option. I don't think they're going to let him get away, but maybe they will.
Maybe.
But the other option that I have, which is going to be another people that shake their head, but it's a 1-year deal. Shore up that offensive line till you can really get a long-term plan. Go after Rodney Hudson, just for a 1-term deal. See if he can bring back some of that magic. He's another one of those that might pop. Might not. Don't give him a lot of money, obviously, because he's struggling a little bit with injuries, I believe, and whatnot. But give him a shot. See if he can solidify that center position until the real young up and comer that they want in the draft or something can take over. So that's mine, and I think they've got to do something, and I think they will. But we're gonna jump back in. Naj is coming with a super chat. Thank you so much. Again, the support is wonderful, and we can't thank you enough for the support. So when you come in here with super chat, it's wonderful. Naj says, "Hey brothers, disappointed to see how things went with Evero. Seems clear he has no interest in sticking around. Do you see any coaches from this past year sticking, and if so, who?" Yeah, we talked about Evero, man. Naj, appreciate it. It is a bummer. It's a real bummer, and like I said, he's going to have to learn that. You can't be disappointed when things come and go, friends leave the NFL. If you're going to be a head coach, you're going to have to learn to fire your friends. That's the way it is. And if not, you're not going to make it as a head coach, because if someone's struggling, you can't have that loyalty. I know it sounds bad. I mean, you can still be their friend, but you can't be loyal to the point where you're not winning football games. And it has happened. And, there's Munchak was a prime example back in Tennessee Titans days when he was the head coach. He kept his friends around, and the ownership said, "You need to fire these people," and he wouldn't do it, so he was let go. So it happens, definitely. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. There's some nice young coaches that are on this team that could stick around for sure. Some of them are getting interviews. I mean, Alton's getting an interview, Clint Kubiak's getting an interview, but some of the other younger coaches who maybe I don't see Uten and Kubiak sticking around. They gave them the opportunity to go interviews. So, but some of the younger ones, Ron, I mean, who are your favorites that are on the staff now that you think might just stick around?
Yeah, I'm thinking Zach Azadi is one that may stick around.
Absolutely. Wide receivers. Yep.
Yeah, for the receivers, I think what he's done, of course, Jerry Judy's, I guess, breakout year was great last year. So I can see Payton maybe retaining him. I think the running backs coach, Tyrone Wheatley, as well, would probably stick around too. And then defensive backs coach, Christian Parker. So those are some ones that I can definitely, and again, they're, to your point, Thomas, they're still a little young, and what they were able to do with our running game a little bit later in the season. I know the running game didn't really get up to par as it did earlier, but a little later in the season, and then with the defensive backs coach, with the secondary, I can see those three as names that can stick around for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I like those names as well. I also like Clayton Huron coming in. Appreciate it seeing you on here from Facebook, man. I'm glad that you caught the show. Clayton says, first time listening to the show. Great way to top off every Saturday night. Go Broncos. Yeah, absolutely. Stick with us. We're going to keep on doing these Saturday night things and fill in that Saturday night spot with Mile High Huddle to keep everybody informed from the goings on in Broncos country. So appreciate that. Young coaches for me, I actually kind of disagree a little bit with the Tyrone Wheatley, only because they are looking at Roshar to come in. I don't think they're going to bring him as offensive coordinator. I think they're going to give him a role maybe with the running back. So I don't know if Wheatley's going to stick around, but Asiani, I think he'll stick around. He seems like a really good coach, up and comer, and there's some other names that might stick around. I don't, the offensive and defensive quality control type people who are still getting their feet under them. I think they're going to come around, so they might stick around.
And Mr. Producer is telling us, Whitley left and took a college head coach job.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Right.
And thanks, Dom, for your Facebook chat. Much appreciated here. Dom asked Mark as an offensive line coach, and he's talking about Mark Schlereth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Stink.
Yes.
Yeah, that's funny, Ron. Yeah, give me your thoughts on that. Yeah, that's an interesting name.
I'm all for it. I know. Yeah, I saw the the comments, and he was willing to talk to Payton and the Broncos to do it. And if he can, so my preference would be Mike Munchak coming back, returning. But if we could get Mark Schlereth, obviously he knows Denver, obviously he knows the Broncos, to help shore this up. I'm all for that. I'm definitely for it.
Yeah, it's an interesting name. I mean, he's a legend in Broncos country for sure. I mean, just the stories about him during the late 90s and early 2000s, those iconic orange hush Broncos offensive line, nicknamed Stink. You can imagine what went on, you heard the story. So, yeah, I mean, it's an intriguing name. I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, I don't know. He knows offensive linemen for sure. It just seems like a long shot to me. So thank you for coming with that question, Dom. I appreciate it. Yeah, it just seems like a long shot, but he'd be welcomed in Broncos country, still around. People seem to really like him, and I mean, he's got a ton of knowledge for sure. So I just don't know. I don't know if he has enough experience to jump right in offensive line coach, like his coaching experience, teaching and stuff. He probably does, but yeah, I think it's a long shot. But it'll be interesting. Phil McLaughlin coming in from Facebook Stars. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Phil.
Good. Phil says, good evening, Thomas, Ron, and Deacon Scott. Well, Deacon Scott isn't here today. Chad's in the background, but we all miss Scott and hope he comes back next Saturday to be with the show. Phil also says, sorry to see Evero go. Happy to see Landau go. Hoping Desai gets the job. Yeah, I mean, we both, Ron and I both have talked about Evero leaving, and that's too bad, and not as unhappy with Lando leaving as well. So definitely, thank you for that comment.
Yes.
So yeah, we got Michael Ronquillo coming in. Thank you, Michael. Thank you for being a great supporter. Like you said the other day, you're the star leader. You're breaking the records for the stars. So we definitely love that. It's very, very much appreciated by everyone at Mile High Huddle. You're the man. Thank you for coming in with that Facebook comment. And then Keith Brugman, we've got coming in. Let's talk. I mean, we've got offensive line questions coming in, which we didn't think we would be doing, but that's great because it needs to be fixed. Keith is talking about how much of the offensive line issues can be fixed by coaching and scheme versus new player acquisition. Now, Ron, I'm going to let you jump in on that one first.
That's a great question, Keith. And again, thank you for your comment. Much appreciated. I think so. The way I see this question is, I think the offensive line, the players that we have just aren't good, in my opinion. So I think to answer this question, new player acquisition will definitely fix it, in my opinion. Now, scheme does help, depending on what scheme the Broncos do run with Payton. The scheme may, at the point of attack, may help, some of the offensive linemen in their key blocks and their gaps protections. But I think the players definitely need to be switched out. The only players in my mind that have been good are like Miners, and then you can say Garrett Bowles has been average, above average when on the field, right, as a left tackle, but I just don't think the interior is good enough, and I think that's where we need to definitely address. We saw what happened with Cushenberry, we saw Dalton Reisner, and of course Glasgow is getting pushed back. So I think if this interior is fixed, meaning fixed with new players, I think the talent for these new players should help. And then the scheme, once brought in, would definitely help the offensive line go back to being top 5, top 10 unit in the league.
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that's missed here really is the injuries. And, the best of ability is availability. And when it comes to offensive line, you have to have continuity. And the offensive line, the original starters, projected starters, never once played together. Even in preseason and in training camp. I mean, Billy Turner was hurt. He didn't come in till later. Then we saw other players start to hurt. So that was a major issue. Number one, they just never had the chance to have that continuity, the feel for each other on the line. So that was number one. And that can be fixed by bringing in other players that can stay healthy, obviously. So if you can keep players healthy and playing together on the offensive line, that's going to make a huge difference. But you also have to understand that we did not see a good offensive line coaching going on either. That I'm telling you, when I watch, especially early on, watching the Broncos offensive line trying to run, it looked like they learned the zone blocking scheme, but a lot of times they just ran it right up the middle without motion, without movement on the offensive line, without trying to get the defensive line moving laterally. I think the coaching had a huge issue so it's a combination of both, but get players that can stay healthy. That's what they need to do, because that is a main key for having a well-oiled offensive line. That alone, having the same 5 players play together all year, is going to make a world of difference. But bring in a new coach who can coach them up. Garrett Bowles was much better with a better head coach, or a better offensive line coach in Munchak, and he had a bit of a decline after he left. So coaching matters, absolutely. And we got Tom and Ron. What was your gut reaction to the Sean Payton hire? Chad Jensen. LOL. Thanks, boss man, for coming in with that one. Ron, I'll let you go first.
I was ecstatic. I put on my Twitter feed, I'm like, finally. And I saw it coming. Obviously they had to work out compensation formalities and such, but I was ecstatic once we hired Sean Payton. And Thomas, our new coach, is ecstatic. I've seen the videos where, after he signed the contract, he was very happy to get started. He wants to bring back in this winning culture to Denver. Obviously, Denver is a football town. He mentioned that as well. So, I think this gives us hope for him to come in, switch the culture, fix Russ, fix the offensive line so we can start winning games. So I am very happy, Chad, and everyone, that we finally have a new head coach, and it is Sean Payton, one of the most winningest coaches out there. So couldn't be more ecstatic.
Yeah, coaching-wise, as far as coaching, his ability as a head coach, absolutely happy with it. I had, like I voiced to you, there was a little bit of kind of moral character problems with Bounty Gate, a few other things. So, he is teaching young and impressionable minds coming in out of college. They're 20, in their early 20s. Hopefully he's changed his ways from that. So that was the only part of that I didn't care for. But quarterback, you're going to, help Russell Wilson, who we have to watch get better. We just have to. And coaching is, he was awesome. So as far as head coaching goes, absolutely great hire. And Deanna Hendry coming in hot with a super chat.
Thank you,
man.
Deanna.
Thank you so much. And Deanna's coming in with a question or a statement here. Evero gone is better than him staying when he didn't want to. We need an offensive line. Sean Payton, between coaches and offensive line, has his work cut out. I have faith in our head coach. Orange and blue, Mile High Huddle for life. Deanna, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. And like we were talking about, the Broncos need to fix their offensive line. I mean, that's what makes it, working in the trenches is really what gets everything going. I mean, I know skill players are fun and whatnot, but if especially with Russell Wilson, he takes a little longer to throw. You need a better offensive line for sure. So yeah, thank you, Ron. What do you think about that? What do you think about that? Her comments here.
Thank you, Deanna. Again, much appreciated for the super chat. And I agree. I agree with everything you said, Deanna. It's best that Evero is gone. Obviously, I don't think he wanted to stay now that his best friend has been fired. So that's I'm happy for Evero that he's moved on. And then, as we just discussed on the offensive line, we definitely need an offensive line. And depending on kind of your perspective, I do think it's, two things can be true of the fact that the coaching for the offensive line has been lackluster ever since Mike Munchak left with Butch Berry. And then just the players aren't good enough. So hopefully with Payton, to your point here, Deanna, when he comes in and brings in this new offensive line coach, and then depending on who we target in free agency and the draft for offensive line, then we can definitely see some improvement along that offensive line sooner than later. So he does have his work cut out for him. And, this, the offensive line has been neglected these past few years. So he definitely has some work ahead. But with his expertise, I have faith that this is going to get turned around quickly.
Yeah, and she hit the nail on the head there when she said she had faith in the head coach, right? I mean, Sean Payton, like we were talking about, great head coach. I mean, you look at now people will point to, he had a Hall of Fame quarterback and he only won one Super Bowl. It's hard to win a Super Bowl. It really is. I mean, I fault him a little bit for that because you would have wanted to see a little bit more success, but he was on the cusp of getting to a couple of other Super Bowls, bad call, Minnesota Miracle there or whatever they're calling it. In the championship game. So, he has the record. Scoring points is not going to be a problem because his offenses have scored so many points over his tenure in the league that I don't think it's a problem. And if you look at what he was able to do for Drew Brees, he saw what Drew Brees was talented at. He saw that Drew Brees was a volume type passer, highly accurate, short passer type. And he really accentuated that. He's going to take the same approach with Russell Wilson. He's not going to bring in the offense and try to make him Drew Brees. He's going to accentuate Russell Wilson's qualities and fit it into the offense correctly. And I know we thought Nathaniel Hackett was going to do that, but he didn't. They both got together and come up with an offense that did not work. It didn't fit Russell Wilson. Sean Payton's not going to do that. That's why I have faith. And that's why, that comment, having faith with the head coach, he's going to be able to see that and work with the strengths of the team. And that's what a good head coach does.
And I flashed Jasmine here. Comment, I got us going 9-8 next season, then 10-7 the next season, baby steps. And, I know it's hard to win a Super Bowl to your point, but they've, ebbs and flows. I know Sean Payton's had a few seasons where they've finished without a winning record, right? They haven't been in the playoffs, but most of the seasons in New Orleans, they've been in the playoffs. And for the Denver Broncos, we would love to get 9 games, right? To even just be knocking on the door of an AFC championship game or just to be in the playoffs. We're starving for that. So, again, I know it's hard to win in this league, but I think Sean Payton comes as proven as they are when it comes to head coach. And I do have faith that he will get the right staff to turn this thing around. So,
yeah, and I'm actually going to have a little bit higher, and maybe I'm wrong because I was way wrong in 2022. I was way too optimistic with Nathaniel Hackett coming in. I think they're going to be a playoff team under Sean Payton. It's just too much experience. He's going to get Russell Wilson, working with the offense better. They're going to score some points, and they still have a good defense. I mean, if the injuries don't mount up, cross our fingers, they're going to be pushing for a playoff spot. I'm looking for success sooner rather than later. So, it's in my mind, it'll be a disappointment if they're not in the playoffs in 2023. Naj, thank you for coming back in with a comment. Appreciate it. Naj says, I'm really wondering if Payton will make it after the draft. I know he's had a tough run, but when Wilson turns this around, he would look like a genius, as will Sean Payton. Yeah, I've got my thoughts on George Payton. Ron, I'm going to let you get that one first, and then I'll jump in after.
That's a great question. Again, thank you very much for your support. Part of me, I don't think he's going to make it after the draft. I think what the Broncos are going to do is, use him for this next draft and then can him. It's like, well, he's kind of been demoted. And it's like, well, with bringing in Sean Payton, and then with Walton Penner himself, kind of sees more of that control. What use does George Payton have? Now, I know Sean Payton mentioned that it's been great working with George, when he was doing his contract signing, and that might be, good when it comes to the scouting and talent side of things. I think, definitely George Payton has an eye for talent, but other than that, what else would George Payton be really doing? Which is why I don't see him lasting after the draft.
I got a different take on that. I mean, they trusted him to go make the deal, right? They trusted him to go make the trade. I mean, the ownership group was at the golf course or whatever, and and Peyton was the one that was out there wheeling and dealing, making the trade happen. I think they see his value. I don't think they're going to get rid of him. I don't know why they would, unless the deal was Sean Payton had full control, which it doesn't appear to be. I mean, if they got look, Payton has had his struggles. He's had his wins. He's got a good eye for talent. People are knocking him now because he went out and got Russell Wilson. Any other GM pretty much would have made that trade as well. I can't knock him too much for that. My mind, his big mistake was Randy Gregory, bringing somebody in that was injured. But I don't see Payton. I don't see Payton leaving. I got to disagree with you on that, Ron. And if they do, I think it's going to be a surprise. I mean, they trust his football knowledge when it comes to making deals. And I think you saw that with the Sean Payton hire and the deal that he made. I mean, you got a heck of a deal for Sean Payton.
We did.
A heck of a deal. I mean, a first and a swap for a second, a third. I mean, you're not going to find that much talent in the draft. It's just not going to happen. I mean, unless you're really lucky. So, yeah, I think he sticks around. Keith Brugman, Facebook. Thank you for coming in from Facebook, man. We like having your comments on here. It's great. Keith says, how much pressure will be on the next DC, given how much Evero was respected by the players? Well, I think there's going to be a significant amount of pressure only because everyone's sitting around watching what Evero did with a defense that was riddled with injuries. And if somebody that comes in and cannot make the defense better, or at least as good without injuries, then people are going to be shaking their head saying this, they should have done everything they could have to keep Evero. What are your thoughts, Ron?
I agree, Thomas. I agree. I think the pressure is going to be, I wouldn't say huge or tremendous, but there's going to be some big pressure for this next DC, right? Given what Evero did last year, given the talent of these players on defense, there's going to be some pressure on keeping that elite status or keeping that above average status, if you will, right? Top 5, top 10 defensive statistics, just about in every category or most categories. So the pressure will be high to make sure that we stay consistent because, Denver's been known to have a great defense over the past several years, although, we've been losing and the offense has struggled. It's been known to be a good defensive team, and we want to keep it that way. So there's going to be some pressure from the next defensive coordinator to keep that status.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the pressure's on whoever comes in. It has to be. And they need to perform. They absolutely have to perform because the offense is going to be clicking finally. I mean, if we could believe that Sean Payton can have a good offense, you can't have the defense being the weak link all of a sudden. And Ryan Slavic's coming in with the question, says, hey, fellas, would you rather have Flores or Desai for DC? My personal preference is Desai. I know Flores has had some head coaching experience, and he did a pretty darn good job in Miami. I think he got a kind of a raw deal there. I think he had them competitive. Desai to me seems like a better kind of flow from where they are now into next season, right? Like he's learned under the same people that Evero learned under, really. I mean, for the most part, not totally, but he did have that same kind of knowledge. So I think the transition will be better. than Flores. I think Flores is a little bit more of a kind of wild card to me than necessarily Desai, even though we don't know maybe as much about Desai when we've watched Flores in prime time as a head coach and whatnot. But I can't knock Flores. He learned from one of the greatest coaches of all time in Bill Belichick. So I don't know. My preference is Desai. How do you feel, Ron?
Thank you, Ryan. Again, I appreciate the comment, and I agree with Thomas here. That Desai would be my preference, just because of the scheme wouldn't change much, maybe not change at all, and then of course there are ties to Vic Fangio. So I think there's a familiarity there with Desai, so that would definitely be my preference. Yeah, again, Flores was good as a linebackers coach, DC. So I think that he would be an okay hire, but just based on the familiarity and with the players, it just makes sense for Desai to get that nod.
Yeah, and I'll just tell you right now, they need to work. They need to make sure that their edge rushers stay healthy, because that was really hurting the team down the stretch. They did not get enough pressure, and which leads me into EJ's super chat, coming in with a nice super chat, coming in hot. EJ saying coming in a bit late, which is fine. I mean, come in as long as you're here. That's all good. And he says, but how much could a change in strength and conditioning program make it in the trenches on both sides of the ball? Well, again, I don't want to blame Landau for all the injury problems, but there was an injury problem, right? So just a change in luck. I mean, obviously, several years of injuries maybe isn't luck, but something was going on. Staying healthy on the offensive line, like I said before, is a huge benefit for continuity and keeping your stars on the field. If you go through to your third or fourth best player, you are going to have a drop off in talent. Their defensive line stayed a little bit more healthy. The edge rushers did not. That's another key. They have to keep those edge rushers. I mean, Randy Gregory has got to play a full season to make make up for what he was paid. He has to. So I think it's a huge deal to keep people healthy. And if it's the change that does it, great. But they have got to have healthy players, Ron. They have to. I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, they were riddled with injuries.
I again, thank you, EJ, for your super chat. I appreciate it. And I agree, Thomas. They have to be available, right? And availability is being injury free, or at least mostly, right? So the injuries definitely have caused this ship to sail in the trenches. And a change in this strength and conditioning program. George Payton mentioned himself on a few occasions this past season that this had to get looked into. And of course, with Sean Payton coming in now, this is definitely a topic that's going to be of importance as he starts to build this offensive line. So we want to make sure that that person comes in and, can help with the strength and conditioning of players to at least prevent some of these injuries, so we can fortify this line. But I definitely agree. It's a cause for concern. But now with Lauren Landau out and with this new person, we can definitely help and hopefully stay injury free, so we can fortify the trenches, because we've been struggling in the trenches for the past few years now.
Absolutely. And Patty Perez coming in from YouTube with a comment. Appreciate the comment. Agree 100% with Thomas. It's always great to see when people agree with me, but I don't mind if you don't. And on Evero, wanting to follow his buddy out the door. He'll never get a head coaching job that way, especially if he goes to Minnesota, where we're dead last and no good defensive players. Yeah, I mean, it is a bummer. You kind of hit the nail on the head. It's a bummer to see him leave. It is a bummer to for him to have that attitude like that, because he's trying to get a head coach job. He's in the running. He needs to understand that you can't have a lot of allegiances if it's affecting the play on the field. So, yeah. And Michael's coming in. Michael Runke's coming back in. Another Facebook stars. What's going on, man? Appreciate it. Comes in with a comment. Cowboys has their new offensive coordinator in Brian Schottenheimer. He will not come to the Broncos as their offensive coordinator. And frankly, I'm happy about that. I didn't want Brian Schottenheimer. I've got some other options. What do you think, Ron? we're going to start winding down the show, but give me another name for offensive coordinator that you think it would be a good Denver Broncos coordinator under Sean Payton.
Thinking nothing else comes to mind now, Thomas. The Joe Lombardi and the David Shaw ones are the only two that are really coming to mind.
I'll throw a couple out there and you tell me what you think, and then we'll start wrapping up the show. So Aaron Cromer is one that I think has a lot of familiarity with Sean Payton, right? Had some, he's an O-line coach for the Bills. So, learning from another pretty good offense. I think, he's hit or miss with his offensive coordinator when he was with the Bears. Really good in points in 13, not so good in 14. Joe Brady is another one with familiarity with Sean Payton. And I'm going to throw out another wild card for you. And I'm just going to drop this bomb and let you soak it in. Mark Trestman.
So, I mean, so the latter two are intriguing. I didn't think about Joe Brady. Joe Brady would be interesting. Trustman, I think I may have to think about that one a little more. I wouldn't be bad, but definitely be intriguing for sure. But yeah, Joe Brady. I guess the three now that you mentioned Joe Brady's name, the two Joes, the Lombardi and the Brady, and then the David Shaw will probably be up there when it comes to Payton's options. So.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Brady, he had a tough time with Matt Rule in Carolina for sure. But, his familiarity with Payton, and he's keeping coach of the Bills. So, I mean, Bills another good offense. I only say Mark Trestman because it could be a wild card there. He was a consultant with the Saints back in the day in 2007. He has some offensive ability. I just like to throw it out there because, it's something that could happen. You never know. But, and the last name is John Morton. That's another name that I think that they could be looking at. But, right now it's pretty hush-hush of who the offensive coordinator is going to be and how he's going to fill out that offensive staff. They, got a couple names floating out there, but nothing really huge. So we'll see what happens. And those are the names that you should probably keep on your mind. What I think Doug Marrone, John Morton, Aaron Cromer, and Joe Brady for sure. And then, of course, I like to throw in the wild card there with Trestman. But Garth Knight, thank you for coming in with Super Chat. Garth says T and R for Tom and Ron. Obviously, glad I caught you live. Loving the stash, Tom. I'm hoping for Flores myself. Yeah. Thank you. I've never had a mustache before, so I shaved the beard, kept the stash, and I've gotten some compliments. So I might have to keep it around. So thank you very much. Flores is is an intriguing name. I mean, he's a big time name, and so I mean, Garth, you're right. I mean, you really can't go wrong with Flores, but like we kind of said early on, there's some hurdles to overcome with Flores, right? I mean, the lawsuits, the big kind of elephant in the room. What are they going to do? Is he going to continue with his lawsuit and work for the company, the business, or whatever, the entity that he's suing? It's going to be a tough one. So I don't know, man. What do you think, Ron? Do you really think that he's a prime candidate with the lawsuit?
I really don't think so. I really don't think so. I think, again, I know the lawsuit was targeted more at Ellis and Elway, but it still leaves a bad taste, and you still don't want that juju hanging over, even if he comes in as the DC. So I really don't think so. And again, it just would make more sense for Desai to come in, given the familiarity with Fangio and Payton. And of course, much on the defensive side doesn't have to change. I just think Desai is a prime candidate for this position. So, but yeah, I don't see Flores coming in as a DC. And thank you, Phil McLaughlin. Much appreciated for the stars. Who do you guys see as possible special teams coach? Possibly Rosberg. Yes, that's who I would want to be at least considered for the special teams job. I know on the, I know for special teams, that's his forte. And he would definitely come in and right the ship. I know we've had issues, obviously, with special teams for the past several years. We thought that, with Dwayne Stukes, that would have gotten fixed, but it's not. So I'm all for Rosberg coming in and changing this special teams unit. Hopefully, we've seen what he's done, right? Just with the team overall, right? The past, 2 games of the season, the last 2 games of the season. So coming in to help with special teams would be great. Right. And I think that's all here. So again, thank you guys for joining us this evening. It's been much appreciated. Thank you for all the support, all the stars and all our coming in. And then we will look forward to seeing what Sean Payton and who Sean Payton brings in as his next for his coaching staff. So have a good night, and I'll talk to you guys later. Go Broncos.